So this is my Education 303 project. We're going to talk about child abuse and neglect. Child abuse is when a child gets physically harmed, mentally or emotionally injured, sexually molested. Neglect is when a child's parent or guardian fails to provide care for them. Some of our students at school can be getting abused or neglected, so as teachers, it's very important that we pay attention to those things. As teachers, we are the mandated reporters, so this means that we must report when we notice that a child is getting abused or neglected. Protections for school personnel regarding child abuse and neglect. School personnel of child abuse and neglect are protected from lawsuits. Every state provides immunity by law for civil suit and criminal prosecution. Immunity is mandatory or permissible reporters. I'll talk about good faith in a minute, and then in many states, good faith is presumed. So this means that someone can sue a reporter if they can prove that they did not use good faith. Now we're going to talk about legal obligations. School personnel must supervise students at schools. School officials must report if they notice any kind of abuse, neglect happening to a student. All states require this. School personnel, they can be held liable if they fail to not report and report if you suspect a child getting abused or neglected. So if a teacher's report about a child being abused or neglected, if that's profounded, then they can be entitled to immunity from liability as long as their report was made in good faith. And these are the 11 mandated responses of a crisis management in Illinois. And then there are 5 safety drills in Illinois, and they are fire drill, which there are 3 every year, bomb evacuation drill, bus evacuation drill, law enforcement drill, and severe weather drill. Now we're going to talk about the a teacher's role in safety drills and crisis management plans. I believe it's very important for teachers to know what to do for all the safety drills and crisis management plans. I think it's very helpful for a teacher in the classroom to have a chart so they know where to go for certain drills and crises. Following safety procedures is very important because we do not need teachers or students running down the hallways, and teachers and students need to go to a location they're told to for certain drills and crises. Being prepared is extremely important. Staying calm in front of the class. I say this because if a teacher is not calm and is panicking, that can make the students to be scared. Having a list of students' medical conditions and having their emergency contact information. So if a student is having a seizure or allergic reaction at school, the teacher and nurse can contact the parents so that they can come to the school to get their child or tell the school what they need to do to help their child at school. Another thing important is to have plans for the substitute teacher so that the substitute will know what to do during these times. So my first legal component is teacher's personal life. I chose this because teachers have a life outside of school. I think a teacher's behavior away from school is their own business and should be protected by the right to privacy. Students and colleagues do not need to know what teachers are doing 24/7. I think that if a teacher does something illegal, then the school should get involved to solve the problem. But if a teacher is doing great in school, not causing problems, then others should not try to get involved in their personal business. This relates to me because I also have a life outside of school. I absolutely love teaching the classroom and being around the students. When myself and my colleagues are not at school, others do not need to roam around in our privacy. Here's a scenario I came up with. Can a teacher be fired or suspended for getting a DUI? Absolutely. A teacher could permanently lose his or her job with the school system. When a teacher receives a DUI, I believe that's when the school should get involved in the teacher's life because drinking and driving is extremely dangerous. I chose religion as my second component. Religion plays a huge role in people's lives, and it's extremely important for teachers to know what to say and do that involves religion at school. Public schools should not favor a certain kind of religion or be hostile towards a religion. Students can pray at school, but it must be student-led, which means teachers cannot start these prayers. Some schools could be strict about people wearing religious jewelry or clothing at their schools because they could find that to be disruptive. So I think teachers should ask schools before wearing religious clothing so they don't have to change during the day. This relates to me because I need to be aware of these religious rules before teaching. It's very important for educators to follow the rules so that they do not offend students or other staff members. A scenario I came up with is before school, there are some students that are gathering around the flagpole. Teachers tells all students to grab hands and listen to him as he prays. Is that all right? It's not all right because the teacher was leading the prayer. It's only okay if it's okay for students to pray as long as it's a student-led prayer. Now we're going to talk about function. It's a part of the academic language. Purpose for which language is being used. Some of these examples are analyze, explain, and compare. These action verbs are part of the learning objectives for a lesson. Now we're going to talk about vocabulary, which is also a part of the academic language. There's 3 sections of vocabulary in a lesson plan, and they are Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Posters and word walls are a few ways to introduce vocabulary in the classroom. Syntax is also another part of the academic language, which is specific ways to organize language in order to convey meaning. Using transition phrases and sentences and have students to practice their writing are ways to help with this. Discourse, students will write, talk, participate in knowledge construction using the structures of written oral language. So oral explanations, construct arguments are some ways students will do this. The importance of academic language. I talked about how it's very important for students. Students have a good understanding of academic language they are currently learning will help them to be successful in their lesson. Once students have a good understanding of this, teachers can then introduce them to new vocabulary words. Oral discussions, writing, taking notes are some ways to help them improve with their knowledge. And below that is my research theory to help back up my statement. And this is an academic language example from one of my past lessons. Planning is very important when doing your lessons. When planning lessons, teachers need to produce an objective for their lesson. The objectives that a teacher produces for a lesson must go along with standards, and These standards go along with all grade levels, and teachers must make objectives for Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 students. And I say that because it's important for teachers to know what to do for all their students in the classroom. Now we're going to talk about instruction. Teachers base their instruction what the students will be assessed over. There's two types of assessments, and they are formative and summative. Now we're going to talk about feedback. I think feedback is very important when you're teaching, because I believe it can help build the students' confidence and not bring them down. And some examples of positive feedback is telling students that they did a good job, saying that was a really good response, and also that was a good guess, and then explain why the correct answer is correct. And then this is an example of the learning process: the I do, we do, you do together, and you do alone. This is also from one of my past lessons. And then this is my research to back it up from the last slide. And then that's the end of this.